Tonight, Blaze Bernstein, the name in the headlines so many of you will recognize. The massive search triggered by celebrities and social media.
But now the chilling new details. You may not have heard about this missing college student. The all-new 2020 starts right now.
Who leaves their house without any of their items at night and doesn't show back up again?
This isn't just anybody. This is an Ivy League college student with his whole life in front of him.
Did he run away? Was he injured? Had he been abducted?
Blaze Bernstein disappeared 1 week ago.
Missing while home for winter break.
My dad was just like, we have each other, it's gonna be okay.
And there was an immediate firestorm of attention to this case.
Charlie Puth, who put it out there, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
This is the period in which begins your amateur
This is what we're trying to figure
investigation.
out
You
what's
become a
going on.
sleuth.
We would not have been able to figure it out without the help of kids his age.
I remember showing the police, like, look what I have.
And that's when the whole evening changed.
Blaze Bernstein's phone at that point in time turned off, and I had no more records.
So they've been together, and
Correct.
suddenly Blaze goes dark.
I heard voices raised in the distance somewhere, screaming like,
Blaze's best friend received a text message. I did something really horrible for the story. No one can ever know.
So if you're dealing with a situation like this, you don't want the person who you're hunting to know that you're onto them.
Just help us find my brother.
Well, the search ramping up today for a Lake Forest teen who disappeared while visiting his family over the holidays.
Blaze Bernstein has been missing since Tuesday night.
Police searching by ground with canines and by air with helicopters.
We're hoping that he's just incapacitated in need of some medical assistance.
Anyone with information should contact the Orange County Sheriff's Department. Blaze Bernstein.
Blaze Bernstein.
Blaze Bernstein.
What are your favorite pictures here?
The kids like to goof off a lot, and he would dress up. They love to dress up. They love to do puppet shows, and this is him in a school play when he was little. And we spent a lot of time at Disneyland, because it's right here in our backyard.
Oh, yeah.
That's us sitting there. It was a great day.
Memories of much happier times for parents. Gideon and Jeannie Bernstein married in 1992. They moved from Los Angeles to Orange County to raise a family. They have 3 kids. The youngest is daughter Bowie, Jay in the middle, and Blaze, the oldest.
We had a lot of fun raising the kids together. It was fun. And no one can take that away from us, so we still own that.
Blaze Bernstein grew up here in the city of Lake Forest. It's an upper middle class bedroom community about an hour south of Los Angeles, home to about 90,000 people.
Growing up in Lake Forest was really nice. It was kind of inland from the coast, like 30-minute drive from the beach.
It was actually a really quiet residential area. Houses were beautiful, a lot of families there.
When we wanted to start a family, we left Los Angeles with the idea that we'd be moving to a safe suburbia, one of the safest places in the country.
And by all accounts, Blaze is this bright, gifted teenager with a sharp wit and a warm heart.
I've known Blaze since we were babies. Blaze as a kid, besides being very high energy, he was really creative, he was very thoughtful.
Blaze was incredibly bright, curious. He was really a Renaissance young man. I mean, he was interested in everything.
Surrounded by family and friends, Blaze was bar mitzvahed in 2011. That's a Jewish celebration of adulthood on a boy's 13th birthday. It was an occasion especially meaningful to his grandmother.
I did know that his grandmother was from Romania and survived the Holocaust.
I really think that Blaze got it. He was proud to be a Jew, humanistic philosophy, caring about the world and understanding the world's only going to change if human beings change it.
But even though Blaze possessed that understanding, it offered no protection from becoming a target of frequent bullying.
Growing up in Lake Forest was not super easy for him. He was bullied every single day on the bus. He just wanted to get out of the public school system.
And it wasn't just the bullying. Even though Blaze is a good student, he longs for something more.
Go, man, go.
Something that challenged him, not just intellectually, but creatively. And he would find it at OSHA.
OSHA is the Orange County School of the Arts. It is a 7th through 12th charter art school.
In order to get into that school, you have to audition, and about 1 in 10 students who audition actually get into this school. So it's very competitive.
Blaze auditioned for OSHA. He was artistic in every single way possible. He was very creative.
His talents going in were performing arts and writing, and he wanted to move into the creative writing department.
We've had students who wound up professional actors, designers, you know, the writers, the whole thing, musicians.
Among the more famous OSHA alumni are actors Pedro Pascal, class of 1993, who starred in the HBO hit The Last of Us, and Matthew Morrison, a 1997 graduate and star in Fox's popular TV series, Glee.
And I want you to listen very closely to the lyrics because I really mean what I'm singing.
Once Blaze got to OSHA, he felt like there was a community there for him. He had a lot of friends. He was very social.
I met Blaze when he was a senior in high school. He shared some of his writing with me, and I wrote a letter of advocacy for his application when he applied early decision to Penn because he was a brilliant writer.
Blaze's exceptional talents got him into the University of Pennsylvania, and he moved across the country to Philadelphia as a pre-med freshman in the class of 2020.
Was he homesick at the start?
I think that the first semester at school was difficult for him in terms of the social life there. He was used to being in a small school. You know, now he's a little fish in a big sea, and I think that he had to come to grips with that.
When I found out that he was going to an Ivy League, I was like, oh, you know, that makes sense.
At Penn, Blaze got involved in Penn Appetit.
Penn Appetit is a student-run magazine for people who are interested in writing and also interested in food.
He knew that those would be his people.
Our photographer for Penn Appetit, he held a photo shoot where we dressed up in our chef's whites and aprons. We brought whisks and knives. We have photos of him, you know, holding the whisk, being surprised. I mean, he was so helpful, and we're so fortunate to have these photos of him.
It was a Tuesday in January. A 19-year-old Blaze was home for winter break. He was in a really good place and looking forward to second semester of his sophomore year, but not before he treated his family to a special meal.
He was baking butternut squash with, you know, sprigs of thyme that were inside them.
He made a turkey.
And he made a...
He took over my job, more or less. I was on vacation, and he was here.
So dinner broke up, I guess, absolutely normally.
It was a quiet night. Didn't hear anything unusual. I woke up the next day and it was a normal morning.
A normal day until it wasn't.
I got up and Blaze's door was closed, and the housekeeper said, "Oh, don't wake him, let him sleep in." And I said, okay. Well, I knew I had a dental appointment with him that day, so I decided I'd wait until my yoga class was over to try to contact him so I wouldn't wake him. And I tried getting hold of him, and he wasn't picking up, he wasn't returning my texts. But I went to the dental appointment thinking he would show up, and I immediately called Gideon, and I said he never showed up for his appointment. And he said, well, are you sure he slept at the house last night? And that's when
when we both kind of freaked out.
I yelled, oh my God.
19-year-old Blaze Bernstein was last seen Tuesday night.
We're hoping to find him and bring him home safely.
My dad called me and was like, hey, like, have you heard anything from Blaze? He's not picking up the phone. It's really weird. Like, just let us know if you hear anything. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right.
I was at work, so I'd basically run out of my office and jump in the car and drive home as quickly as I can. and just go run upstairs, and his glasses are there, his wallet's there, his keys are there.
Panicked and confused, the Bernsteins were calling everyone they could think of to see whether anyone had seen or heard from Blaze in the last 12 hours.
And what were they saying?
They didn't know anything.
Nobody knew, where his location was.
Well, I found out that Blaze was missing, and it was just really shocking to me because I was like, there's no way that he could have like run away. He wasn't that kind of person.
So this is the period in which begins your amateur
This is when we're trying to figure out
you
what's
become
going
a
on.
sleuth.
Yeah.
Well, we had no idea what was going on.
He hadn't slept in the bed.
And, his bags for going back to school were already packed.
You think, well, hanging out with some kids, other teenagers, and forgot to call home. You have to believe that's a defense against the most awful.
When it became dark outside, I think that's when we started to really be super concerned.
One of the first things the Bernsteins thought of is using the Find My app, which allows users to share their location with others.
So did you have like a follow my friend on the iPhone?
Yes, we did. We had that, and I saw that the location services were turned off.
So we called the sheriff's department.
They came and they were really downplaying it, like, oh, 19-year-olds, they run away sometimes, but they'll be back.
He was adamant that 100% of the time that these kids are out on a booty call or doing something with, he told me.
Of course, we explained that there were some, unique circumstances with regards to, his personal belongings still being here. And so they offered to do a missing persons report.
So a kid disappears without his glasses, his wallet, or his keys. There are people who actually told me about it just in the couple of days after he went missing, who suggested that maybe this was suicide. Did you ever contemplate that?
Never.
Not even close. He was so happy. He was in a great place.
He was in one of the best places I had ever seen him before. That week, he was so happy. He was so excited to go back to school. He was so excited to just have the rest of his life. And so at that point, there was no doubt in my mind, he would never have done that.
Gideon and Jeannie confirmed with Verizon that Blaze hadn't made any recent phone calls. A quick check of his computer revealed no exchanges on iMessage or Facebook DMs. And so with virtually no solid information to go on, the Bernsteins, along with help from their 14-year-old daughter, Bowie, began dipping deeper into Blaze's social media.
We would not have been able to figure it out without the help of kids his age that he grew up with. and our daughter, yes.
I told my parents, I'm like, I can try and help you find everything that you need. I'm really good with Snapchat. I knew the names of a lot of his friends, so I was able to text them and ask them if they knew what was going on.
And that's when the whole evening changed.
Yeah.
When they said, well, what about Snapchat? That's when the light bulb went on. I mean, we were exhausted, but I said, okay, let's try and figure out how to get in.
Snapchat is a free mobile messaging application used to share photos, videos, texts. But what's different about the app is that whatever is shared, including text messages, disappears from the recipient's screen after just a few seconds.
We were lucky because we knew his username because he was connected with our daughter. And the password ended up being one of the ones that we had on our iCloud keychain. So we typed the username, and then we tried that password in, and boom, we're in.
Still, getting into Blaze's Snapchat account was only half the battle. Yes, it might contain a critical record of who Blaze may have been in contact with the night he disappeared, but as the Bernsteins discovered, simply viewing the message might also trigger it to vanish.
At the time, Snapchat worked. If you sent a message, it could only be saved if you purposefully saved it, and it could be deleted by the person who sent it, and it only lasts 24 hours if you don't save it.
And there were so many other pitfalls with this. I mean, if you take a screenshot of these communications because you think you're saving them, well, that alerts the person that sent it to you.
The sender gets an alert.
So if you're dealing with a situation like this, you don't want the person who you're hunting to know that you're onto them.
What you're describing is basically dealing with this digital nitroglycerin that at any moment could just blow up in your faces. And this is the most important thing in your lives right now.
I had my daughter next to me, and I said, okay, I need you to save, because I know there's a way that you can save it, but I didn't really know how.
What time is it by now?
I don't know, it's like close to 10 o'clock at night, like 9:30, 10 o'clock. And we saw that Blaze gave our address out to somebody.
Did you know who?
We didn't know at the time who it was. We saw the name.
I had absolutely no idea who he was. I was so happy that there was somebody who we could talk to that could just help us find my brother.
Bernsteins didn't know the person Blaze sent his address to, but in the hours ahead, the discovery of that person's identity would turn the desperate search for their son upside down.
Hi, this is Blaze's dad. We really need to know what you know. We can't find him.
This is becoming an urgent issue with trying to figure out what really happened to him, and we're gonna really need your help on this because you're the last person that probably saw him.
That was not the person that I really expected him to be with.
Who leaves their house without any of their items, at night and doesn't show back up again?
This isn't just anybody. This
Right.
is an Ivy League college student with his whole life in front of him.
Right.
With a beautiful life waiting for him.
Hours had passed since anyone had heard or seen Blaze. Did he run away? Was he injured? Had he been abducted? There was no sign of him anywhere. Now, as darkness fell, there was finally a glimmer of hope.
We wanted to make sure that if there was any chance that Blaze was still alive, that I took it. I wanted to ensure that not 1 second was wasted.
And the Bernsteins discovered something else. It was a final text message sent to Blaze at 3 p.m. from his best friend. Hey, I'm really worried about you. Please text me. There was no reply. The Bernsteins frantically reached out to that best friend, who told them Blaze did exchange messages with someone else overnight. Now it seemed that person was their best hope of finding Blaze.
We don't know what the conversations were that led up to his disappearance, so we want that information.
Gideon Bernstein, through his own investigation, found out that there was communication on the Snapchat application. And so he was able to message through direct messaging Sam Woodward.
We didn't know who he was. I was like, oh, we should call him. Like, he definitely knows what's going on. And so I encouraged my dad to call him, and we recorded a call.
We haven't heard from him all day. He missed an appointment today, and then we started getting concerned, and I've been trying to figure things out. So you're the first real clue to the puzzle here.
Yeah, honestly, I'm sorry.
I don't know if my dad told me to record it or if I just had the thought that maybe having any sort of evidence that we could hold on to would be able to help us.
I don't mean to put any pressure on you. I know you're a nice young man, but I'm asking you for help on this if you can, if you've got the ability to do that.
Absolutely. This is, I want to find Blaze as much as you do.
During that call, Sam Woodward told Gideon that Blaze suggested they drive to a nearby park to meet yet another one of his friends, but never mentioned that friend by name.
And he said he invited a third friend to come along. So I said, okay.
I didn't want to speak because I didn't want to get involved, but I was listening and to my dad, just ask him questions and go back and forth.
And then did he get out of the car or what happened?
Yeah, he got out of the car, and I got out of the car too, and I just asked him, who is this guy? And he's just like, you'll find out in a little bit, he's a friend of mine. And then, so I'm just like, okay, Blaze, and I just waited there by the bathroom, and I didn't see where he went.
I was just thinking to myself, this is maybe weirdest, situation that we could be in at this moment. And I remember that phone call went on for a while, too.
I guess I realized, did something happen to him? So I went back. I searched all over for him where I was at the library. I couldn't find him anywhere. And I guess I just figured he might just call me in the morning or just pranking me, but I'm scared now.
It's a disturbing phone conversation, which now raises more questions for the Bernsteins than it answers.
We were curious to know who this person was, but then we did find out he was a student at OSHA.
20-year-old Sam Woodward and Blaze were former high school classmates at OSHA.
I have known Sam since he was born, kind of grew up alongside of him. I remember excitement, during Sam telling me that he was going to OSHA.
Woodward grew up only 30 minutes away in the wealthy coastal town of Newport Beach.
Sam was joyful. He was a really happy, special kid.
He lived in this house with his parents and a brother who by all accounts were devout Catholics and attended church regularly.
Everything we did, all the families we spent time with, were from our church.
I did teach Sam Woodward in acting for the camera in his 10th grade, and I had him for the one semester.
For 10 years, Phil Schwadron taught drama and directing for grades 9 through 11 at OSHA.
He was definitely serious. He didn't crack jokes, didn't laugh a lot, as to my memory.
Sam went to OSHA with me from 7th grade to 10th grade. I would say that he did not necessarily fit into the general OSHA artsy vibe.
We came back for what would have been Sam's 11th grade year, and I said, who have I got this year? And my boss said, yeah, you're going to get them all back except one left the school. Who left the school? Sam Woodward left the school.
I wasn't really surprised that he left. I kind of just thought that he left because he just didn't like it there.
After leaving OSHA, Sam enrolled in Corona Del Mar High School. During that time, he became an Eagle Scout, graduating in 2016. Now, 2 years later, nothing seemed to explain how or why this unlikely pair with seemingly nothing in common ended up together in this park. And now, one safely home, the other nowhere to be found. So now you have this critical piece of information.
Yeah.
Do we immediately call the sheriffs and say,
yes,
we have something?
Yes, we did.
Yep, right away.
And what's their response?
They come over right away.
They came over.
Okay.
And now it was serious.
We just gave him the lead of the last person we knew that he had seen.
I remember taking that call and showing the police, like, look what I have. We talked to somebody who said that they know where my brother is.
When I first saw the missing persons report and I was reading the details, some of those details definitely stuck out. So something told me just deep within me that this was unusual. So my then partner, investigator, Jack Ackerman, and I went to the park, probably right around lunchtime on January 4th.
I had a feeling as a mother, it was my intuition that something very bad had happened.
On January 3rd, 2018, the day Blaze Bernstein's family realized he was missing, Blaze's sister Bowie recorded a phone call between her father and 20-year-old Sam Woodward, a former high school classmate who says he was one of two people with Blaze the night he disappeared.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bernstein, but your guess is as good as mine.
Woodward said Blaze made plans for a third person to meet up with them in a neighborhood park that night.
Blaze didn't tell me anything about this guy except that he was from OSHA like us.
Really appreciate you calling me and sharing that info. And is it okay if I reach back out to you if I need some help?
Absolutely. I want to find Blaze as much as you do.
When they were talking about meeting another person, I was like, what other person? Who else would my brother, like, be with?
So you want a water? I got a water. What kind of monster you want?
The next day, Orange County Sheriff's investigators bring in Sam Woodward to ask some questions of their own.
You can leave at any time. You're not under arrest or anything like that, okay? We're just trying to
Find Blaze.
find Blaze. That's it.
As investigators get to know Sam Woodward, they learn that he was living with his parents and working odd jobs.
My goals in life are I just want to start a family. I just want to have enough money to support my kids. I just want to have a wife who loves me and get a good job and go to college.
Woodward says he recently reconnected with Blaze on social media.
He said something like, Sam Woodward. Now, that's a face I haven't seen in a while.
I'm looking for eye contact. I'm looking for his general comfortability to try to gain a sense whether somebody I feel is telling me the truth or telling me a lie.
At some point during the conversation on Snapchat, you decided to meet up.
That is correct.
For Blaze's family, the fact that he went out at all that night was a revelation.
We had dinner actually at the dining room table with everybody. He was supposed to fly back to school. So it was going to be the last time my parents were going to see him for quite a while. There was no indication from him that he was going out that night.
During his interview with police, Woodward said that after he picked up Blaze at his house, they drove around for a while, eventually stopping at Borrego Park.
Borrego Park is in the city of Lake Forest. It's a place where you can take your kids. It also has remote hiking trails that stretch for miles.
At some point, somebody exits the car, right?
Mm-hmm. Did he tell you where he was going? He said he was going to meet the friend that he was talking about.
Just like in that call with Blaze's father, Woodward told officers that Blaze was meeting another friend at the park that night. Woodward says he stayed behind as Blaze walked away and disappeared out of sight.
At one point, I heard voices raised in the distance somewhere, but I mean, that happens to my neighborhood all the time. You hear like girls screaming like, ah! And all that. And so I didn't really pay much mind to it.
But I wanted him to feel comfortable talking to me, and he was.
Woodward says he looked for Blaze, but eventually gave up and went home.
I mean, I don't know what happened to him, but something must have.
All that matters is that we find him and we get him back to his family safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially her talking to his parents, because his parents are really nice people.
After several hours of questioning, Sam Woodward left. But police, they remained suspicious, so they decided to put him under surveillance.
I'm trying to record it right now. There was a large team that was deployed into the field, and we followed him anywhere that he went.
And with his growing cause of concern for Blaze Bernstein comes the glare of the media spotlight. The Blaze Bernstein missing persons case is now big news.
The Orange County Sheriff's Department searched the park, but they haven't seen any signs of Blaze.
Blaze was supposed to be in school this morning.
He was supposed to fly back Sunday, go to class today, but instead he's missing.
I remember going with my dog to Borrego Park before and kind of just like walking around to see like, what if I find him here?
Bowie documented that desperate period of time with pictures and videos posted on her Snapchat.
Our congregation went into high gear. We printed flyers with his name and picture and the facts and who to call, and we put them up on bulletin boards and poles all around the city.
At this point, it's now in the hands of the police. But you continue to work.
Yes.
Now you take to social media.
Round the clock. You know, it looked like war games in this house. We had terminals all over the dining room table, and we were all just working.
There was an immediate firestorm of attention to this case. We were absolutely inundated with tips from the public. There were hundreds within the first week, and then that grew exponentially.
Some of our contacts were friends with some of the celebrities that were willing to post it on their social media. And so we had the missing persons flyer out for Blaze on, Kobe Bryant's Facebook page, and Charlie Puth, who put it out there, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So it started to catch a lot of attention.
We were spending every minute talking about it. People were filming in our house, interviewing my parents. Nothing like this ever happened where we were.
Any sign of him, any clothing, obviously him. We're hoping to find him, hoping that he's just incapacitated and in need of some medical assistance so that we can get him and bring him home safely.
There was like this team of people with drones, and they were going throughout Whiting Ranch Wilderness Park. where we were concerned maybe my brother was back there and maybe there was a mountain lion or maybe like something happened to him and he was missing or lost.
For the fourth night in a row, the Bernstein family will go to sleep without their oldest son at home.
It was clear as the week wore on that it was more and more dire.
There's a lot of pressure, immense pressure to perform.
Then, on January 9th, with Blaze missing for 7 days now, a discovery which upends the case.
Jack and I were teamed up. Jack said, "Dylan."
You heard it in his voice.
I could hear it in his voice.
We're going to turn now to those new developments in the mysterious disappearance of an Ivy League student.
19-year-old Blaze Bernstein missing while home for winter break.
The Sheriff's Department launched an extensive search with help from the community.
Days had passed since Blaze vanished into the night. The relentless search by police and volunteers had turned up nothing. Just more anguish for the Bernsteins and frustration for authorities.
The Orange County Sheriff's Department searched the park, but they haven't seen any signs of Blaze.
We utilized cadaver dogs. We utilized drones. We had been to Borrego Park and searched that park over and over again with a fine-tooth comb.
On January 9th, a week after Blaze went missing, investigators decided to go back to Borrego Park one more time after obtaining cell phone data showing Blaze and Sam Woodward were there together.
And this is a week after Blaze went missing.
Yeah, it led us to this particular area when all of a sudden Blaze Bernstein's phone at that point in time turned off.
So they'd been together, and suddenly Blaze goes dark.
Blaze goes dark, and then Sam Woodward's phone continues. There was a torrential downpour. It was cold, it was raining, everything was wet, everything was muddy. We searched all this area until my partner, Jack, and I came to this area right here.
I saw a spot that looked unusual. So I walked down. There was a large tree branch covering an area that looked a little odd, like the rain had kind of settled some dirt around something. I moved the tree branch, and you could see the left hip and upper left leg area of a human body.
And you knew?
Knew.
Had to be him.
Instantly, in my gut, without even seeing the face. And I knew that it was Blaze Bernstein.
They must have found his cell phone as well.
We located a broken cell phone about probably 6 inches, 8 inches below where the body was found.
I was sitting in my English class in 8th grade, and the teacher got a call, and he was like, "Bowie, you're gonna go to the office, they need you for something." And I was like, "Oh, good, maybe some good news." And they took me into this room, and I saw my godmother. She was crying, and I looked at her, and she just hugged me, and she said, "They found him, he is dead. Blaze is gone."
To the index in the body of a college student found in Lake Forest, California. Blaze Bernstein had disappeared 1 week ago. The case now a homicide.
That was the end of hope for me.
We started off this journey over a week ago, looking for our son and asking for everyone to help us find Blaze Bernstein. And we just have learned that they have positively identified our son Blaze's body today.
I just felt so numb, like nothing that had happened in my life had mattered anymore. And then when I got home, my dad was just like, he was just defeated, but he just said, like, "It's gonna be okay. Like, we have each other, it's gonna be okay." Sorry.
The specific details of what occurred at Borrego Park are part of the ongoing investigation.
The autopsy revealed injuries which I believe were a result of an extremely violent encounter. Blaze was stabbed 14 times in the left side of his neck, 5 times on the right side of his neck. He was stabbed, in the knee. He had defensive wounds all over his fingers. He was fighting for his life, and probably a surprise attack.
You hear about that many stab wounds. What does it tell you about the person or the mindset of the person who did that?
Hate and rage. Intimate. It was an intimate killing.
It was devastating news for the family and for the community.
My reaction when I heard it was fury, anger, disbelief. I haven't felt those feelings in my life.
As the investigation into Blaze's murder began, hundreds gathered for a vigil in his honor.
We lost one of our sons. I hope that we can all join together and support the Bernstein family.
The funeral was incredibly painful. We had to ask for RSVPs because we could only accommodate here in the building about 11 or 1,200 people. And then there was a public service at the largest space we have in Orange County a few weeks after the funeral, in the 3,000 seats, and that was full.
I believe most people are good.
Students from Blaze's Performing Arts High School chose to sing Luke Bryan's song, Most People Are Good.
I see a lot of goodness here, and I hope that we can bring more tolerance, more peace, understanding, and love to everything that we do and make a better world for our children. Thank you.
The community wrapped its arms around the Bernstein family. The park near their house where Blaze played as a child and where his body was found turned into a makeshift memorial with messages of love and support from all over the world.
This is a note somebody left us. Dear Lord, please watch over the Bernstein family and give them strength during this time. Please guide our police department to help them find the person or persons who took Blaze away. We still needed answers because we didn't have anybody in custody. In my mind, the hunt was still on.
But for investigators, the hunt would become far more complex because they've discovered that the night of the murder, Blaze's best friend received a text message from Blaze's phone saying, quote, "I did something really horrible for the story, but also no one can ever know," end quote. Blaze's friend responds, "What story?" but gets nothing back.
That was the last text message that was sent from his phone.
The last text message from the phone of a murder victim is always going to be of critical importance to a homicide investigator.
We are 6.5 years since my son was killed.
Blaze is ready. Blaze the trail.
We are all going through our own personal hell right now.
Blaze Bernstein was found with 28 stab wounds.
You hear about that many stab wounds. What does it tell you about the person or the mindset of the person who did that?
A lot of anger somewhere from within, and he took it out on Blaze Bernstein.
Did I introduce him to something that later on came back to haunt us all?
Not only was this just a murder, now we're starting to see a bigger picture.
What do you make of the fact that it's very possible that a neo-Nazi killed Blaze in the United States?
He's the grandson of a Holocaust survivor. This can happen anywhere.
There was almost like a gasp from some people.
Police believe they know who killed Blaze Bernstein.
Were you planning to kill him that night?
I hope that we can all join together and support the Bernstein family.
We're hoping for better results, but yesterday afternoon, sheriff's investigators did find the body of Blaze Bernstein.
19-year-old Blaze Bernstein was first reported missing by his family on January 3rd, 2018. But after a week-long search, he was found dead in a park near his parents' Orange County, California home.
As this investigation moves from search and rescue to a homicide investigation, we ask for your continued support in providing tips and information to the Orange County Sheriff's Department.
As investigators search for answers about who had killed Blaze and why, his parents Jeannie and Gideon flew east to Philadelphia to begin a grim task: cleaning out Blaze's apartment on the campus of the University of Pennsylvania. The grief-stricken Bernstein family invited us to go with them for this emotional and difficult journey.
This is the apartment building that my son moved into. He's on.
Let's first look at his mail.
5 days before he came home to California.
It's been hard especially for Jeannie, to come here, having to go and, basically clean up your child's life after they're gone.
And the kitchen was meticulous. I mean, he had every appliance and everything. I loved his apartment. It was so beautiful. It was so Blaze.
This is the Whisk sweatshirt that my brother got. He was an editor for the Pen Appetit magazine. We were going through his closet and we found it, and I was like, I'm gonna take that.
We had an opportunity to meet Blaze's friends. We will be here for you forever, and we appreciate your friendship.
I'm delighted that Blaze had them in his life because I know that they all made him very happy.
You would have loved this. He used to wear this all the time.
I know.
Oh, that my dad.
Blaze was someone that you can trust with anything, and I trusted him with my life. It was the parent that Blaze was figuring out himself, whether it be religion or sexuality or experience.
At what point as parents did you realize that Blaze was gay?
I had an idea about it when he was probably early high school. I saw something on a phone or that he didn't want me to see, and it kind of confirmed a suspicion that I had, and I think he knew that I had seen it.
We actually had a conversation while he was back at college, and he was telling us essentially, yeah, I am gay, but I just don't want to talk about it.
Did people at school know? Was he?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think his friends knew at school.
Because Blaze was so open about his sexuality with me, I feel like that definitely gave him a better foundation. So if he was to go to his parents and his family and open up about that part of his life, he would have known that we were all there for him. You noticed that too? Yeah. I took a picture of it. In the mirror.
As a mother of a gay man, I am proud to be that.
Blaze is ready. Blaze the trail.
You feel like, like an artist, that you have spent your lifetime sculpting this amazing piece of artwork, and then it gets destroyed. And so here we are. Our artwork is gone. Hard to accept.
Back home in California, the investigation continued, and the focus remained on Blaze's former high school classmate, Sam Woodward, the person who admitted to driving with him to Borrego Park.
We have interviewed that friend several times. That person is not in custody, and we are not prepared to comment on persons of interest at this time.
When Orange County Sheriff's investigator Dylan Jansen first spoke with Woodward the day after Blaze was reported missing, he says Woodward seemed nervous and told different versions of where at Borrego Park he and Blaze went that night. And Jansen says Woodward had what appeared to be injuries on his hands.
Those cuts in your hands, they look pretty gnarly. I mean, how do you think you got those from the fight club?
Sam said he was involved with a fight club.
He said that he sustained these cuts to his hands after somebody was clawing at him during one of the fights.
When I swung at him, I kind of fell on my ass. And I usually try and have my hands to break my fall for me, and so I landed on some rocks.
I've heard of fight clubs, but I didn't believe it. Anytime that Sam Woodward was walking around the station, when he touched the doorknobs, he would cover his hands with the sleeves of his sweatshirt. Is he attempting to cover up fingerprints? Is he attempting to cover up DNA? It was definitely something that stood out.
Nearly a week after that interview with police, when Blaze's body was found, investigators went looking for Sam Woodward once again.
Investigators said that when they searched Woodward's bedroom, there was some damning evidence. They found a knife with blood on the handle and on the tip of the blade. They also found bloodstains on a sleeping bag outside his window and on the driver's side of his car.
The knife that was found in Sam Woodward's room, the areas of the vehicle that had apparent blood in it, the sleeping bag that was found on the side of Sam Woodward's home, they were all tested for DNA, and those results concluded to be the blood from Blaze Bernstein.
With this new evidence, police are now ready to make an arrest.
Under arrest, 20-year-old Samuel Lincoln Woodward suspected of killing Blaze Bernstein.
Police say DNA evidence led them to arrest the 19-year-old's former high school classmate.
I remember thinking to myself, that's the guy that was on the phone.
I want to find Blaze as much as you do.
At the time, I thought, I wonder what my brother was thinking before he died. I wonder if he was in pain, or I wonder if he could have saved himself. I think once Sam was arrested, I knew my brother didn't have a chance.
But something authorities were playing pretty close to the vest was motive. Why would Sam Woodward want to kill Blaze Bernstein? As the days unfolded, investigators would confront a possibility they hadn't even originally contemplated.
Not only was this murder, we're starting to see a bigger picture. It was absolutely shocking.
This morning, the Orange County District Attorney's Office filed one felony count of murder against 20-year-old Newport Beach resident Samuel Woodward.
Before joining ABC News, I spent 26 years as a deputy district attorney in the Orange County DA's office, and for a time, I was one of the prosecutors consulting on this case. Sam Woodward was taken into custody 10 days after Blaze went missing and 3 days after his body was found.
There was the victim's DNA on property that was in the control of the defendant.
Well, I remember that moment well. I was sitting in my room. I think I was watching it on television, and I just thought to myself, it's finally happened. Now what?
With the knowledge of how Blaze was murdered, now an excruciating reality for the Bernsteins, the focus turned to why.
Blaze was stabbed nearly 20 times in the neck. Using a knife to kill is particularly violent because you have to be up so close. That many wounds says this was likely a crime of rage or of passion, more personal than your typical murder. So as a prosecutor, my next question would be, who is Sam Woodward and what was his relationship with Blaze?
I had no clue why Blaze would be meeting with Sam. You know, they were never really friends in school. I just know that everybody else got bad vibes from him.
Woodward grew up in Newport Beach, the wealthy suburb south of LA in Orange County. He was a Cub Scout and Eagle Scout, and as we know, Woodward spent part of his high school years at OSHA, the same elite art school where Blaze had also been a student.
It took me a couple of minutes as I watched the footage. It started to dawn on me, oh my God, that's the Sam I taught. Every kid in my acting for the camera class, it was film work. So I said, everybody pick your favorite movie and bring me a scene or a monologue from that film. And he said, I want to do something from the Army. So I gave him Brad Pitt's speech in Inglourious Bastards.
As a bushwhacking guerrilla army, we're going to be doing one thing and one thing only: killing Nazis.
The provocative Quentin Tarantino World War II thriller is about a plan to assassinate Nazi leaders by a band of Jewish soldiers.
It weighs heavily on me. Did I introduce him to something that later on came back to haunt us all?
A.C. Thompson, an investigative reporter for ProPublica, uncovered some disturbing information when digging into Woodward's background.
When I started reporting on Sam Woodward, what really stuck out to me was this. Sam Woodward was a member of the Atomwaffen Division, which was a neo-Nazi terrorist group that aimed to bring down the U.S. government and incite a race war.
Race war now!
Atomwaffen posted violent propaganda videos online to spread a message of hate and to help recruit new members.
The Atomwaffen Division was a neo-Nazi group that existed from about 2015 to 2020. They were inspired by Charles Manson. They were also inspired by Tim McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber. They weren't interested in protests or marching in the streets. They wanted to kill people.
That organization was hell-bent on destroying America within, taking down the system.
My reporting team and I got access to thousands and thousands of private chat messages that were between members of the Atomwaffen group. Sam Woodward was one of the people in these chats.
Writing in the chats under the alias Saboteur, Woodward spewed anti-Semitic, anti-gay, misogynist hate.
When we executed the search warrants on several electronic devices, including computers and cell phones and laptops, there were thousands of images of white supremacist propaganda and hundreds of images to include the Atomwaffen Division.
But Woodward's interest in Atomwaffen apparently went beyond just talk in a chat room. Also found on Sam Woodward's devices was a picture with James Mason. He's a neo-Nazi whose writings Atomwaffen members describe as a main influence on the group, along with a photo of Woodward in a skull mask giving the Nazi salute.
Now we're starting to see a bigger picture. Not only was this just a murder, there's a high probability that Sam Woodward killed Blaze Bernstein because he was homosexual, possibly because he was Jewish, or a combination of both.
I'm here to announce the Orange County District Attorney's Office will file an amended complaint, a hate crime enhancement accusing Woodward of intentionally committing first-degree murder, due in whole or in part to Blaze's sexual orientation. We will prove that Woodward killed Blaze because Blaze is gay.
What do you make of the fact that it's very possible that a neo-Nazi killed Blaze in the United States?
Yeah, if that's the case, that's going to be the biggest tragedy of this story.
He's the grandson of a Holocaust survivor. This can happen anywhere. You aren't safe from this type of hate.
But something else that's still not adding up, how were Blaze Bernstein and Sam Woodward connected? They were both from Orange County, but Blaze, a young gay Jewish man, and Woodward, a member of a neo-Nazi group, seemed to have nothing else in common. Why were they together that night in the first place? Sam Woodward would have his day in court with a stunning new look and a surprising defense. While Sam Woodward was arrested for killing Blaze Bernstein in January 2018, it would take 6 years for him to face a jury. Woodward was charged with first-degree murder, a hate crime. He pleaded not guilty.
19-year-old Blaze Bernstein was stabbed repeatedly and killed back in 2018, and now, 6 years later, that trial finally begins today.
By the time the trial was starting, I'd already left the DA's office, but I was watching the proceedings closely.
Still, no one seems prepared for the Sam Woodward that has led into Judge Kimberly Menager's courtroom.
There was almost like a gasp from some people, just to kind of that visceral reaction to kind of seeing him. Long, dark, stringy hair, long, dark beard, covering his face. It's hard not to kind of draw mental comparisons to Charles Manson.
Blaze Bernstein was found
with 28 stab wounds.
Senior Deputy District Attorney Jennifer Walker's opening statements tell the story of a young man who they say set out to murder 19-year-old Blaze Bernstein in cold blood. That hate crime charge, she explains, that was brought because prosecutors believe the evidence showed Sam Woodward murdered Blaze because he was gay, but not because he was Jewish.
You'll see the cell phone evidence, the defendant's words, the defendant's hate.
But in his opening statements, defense attorney Ken Morrison did something we definitely don't see every day by making a stunning admission.
My client, Sam Woodward, was responsible for that death. The why is the single most important issue you will need to decide.
This is no longer a trial about guilt or innocence. The question now becomes, did Woodward plan the killing because of a hatred of gay people? Was it premeditated? If the jury agrees, that could mean a first-degree murder conviction and most likely a sentence of life without the possibility of parole.
Morrison argues for a lesser charge of voluntary manslaughter and an acquittal of the hate crime allegation, which would result in a reduced sentence and a chance for parole.
The evidence will show that Blaze Bernstein's sexual orientation had absolutely nothing to do with the reason he was killed.
Jennifer Walker calls her first witnesses, Blaze Bernstein's parents. Gideon Bernstein now faces down the man who killed his son as he recounts the painful moments when the family first realized that Blaze was missing.
You remember where you were when you got the phone call?
I do remember that, yes.
And why does that stand out in your mind?
Because it was the beginning of hell.
Jennifer Walker then brings an Orange County Sheriff's deputy to the stand to describe what he watched Sam Woodward do on January 5th, 2018, after police decided to put Woodward under surveillance.
What did you observe?
I observed him what appeared to be cleaning his vehicle, the interior and exterior.
He had in his possession what looked like a spray bottle of cleaning product.
He's not scrubbing the driver's side door.
It was very strange to us. What was he cleaning? Why?
Jennifer Walker then digs into the heart of her hate crime argument, portraying Sam Woodward as somebody who changed from Eagle Scout to neo-Nazi.
He had developed his long-standing beliefs against Jewish people and gay people and started joining groups that espoused the views that he had.
This is where Woodward's involvement in the extremist group Atomwaffen becomes key for the prosecution. Investigators say they found these images on Woodward's personal devices.
The prosecution calls an ex-member to the stand whose voice has been altered and his face obscured at the request of the court. He's also using an alias.
Good morning, Mr. Murphy.
Good morning.
Prosecutors allege that Woodward sought out the group, and once there, the fires of his hatred were further stoked as he attended multiple meetings.
So this summer of 2017, Austin, Texas, tell us what you and Sam Woodward did.
We took propaganda photos. That involved us throwing up Nazi salutes. Put the Atomwaffen logo on the photos, you know, for propaganda purposes.
The prosecution also presents what Woodward himself labels Sam's diary of hate, emails he sent to himself over a 7-month period in 2017.
The prey that the defendant had chosen was gay people. And he kept a diary of his feelings and intentions.
And who did the prosecution allege that he was, quote, hunting? Well, they say that Sam Woodward had been visiting online dating sites to connect with gay men.
Downloaded Grindr so I could send photos of their fellow sodomites getting killed and tell them that they're gonna be next. They're terrified, LMAO. This is too much fun. They think they're gonna get hate crimed, and it scares the out of them.
And this is how the prosecution claims Sam Woodward targeted Blaze while he was hunting for victims on the dating app Tinder. The two men first connected on the app in June of 2017, 3 years after they'd been classmates at OSHA. And then again, the night Blaze disappeared. The last exchange is allegedly what led to their encounter in Borrego Park.
And then here is where the luring starts. And the defendant says, "Is anyone near you right now? Because I just wanted to say." And Blaze says, "Nope. No, what? No one is near me." And the defendant says, "I might make an exception for you." And the defendant says, "Look, do you have Snap?" And then we have Blaze snapping his address to the defendant at 10:37 p.m. on January 2nd of 2018.
According to prosecutors, the trap had been set and Blaze stumbled right into it that night when he agreed to meet up with Sam Woodward.
But when it's the defense's turn to present its case, jaws will drop in the courtroom because the star witness will be the defendant himself, Sam Woodward. And the crux of the defense's case, that Sam had a secret and would go to any lengths to hide it, even if he had to kill.
He kept saying something that I can only remember as, "I got you already. I got you, I got you."
Today we're going to another day of court. It's definitely a challenge emotionally and mentally to get up and just have to go and do this.
We are 6.5 years since my son was killed. We are all going through our own personal hell right now. The prosecution rested last week, and we're now listening to defense witnesses.
Sam Woodward's defense attorney, Ken Morrison, is making his case.
Sam did not hate Blaze for any reason.
Remember, the defense has acknowledged that 26-year-old Sam Woodward killed Blaze Bernstein, but they insist it was neither a premeditated murder nor a hate crime.
You will also hear lots of additional evidence that helps to explain why this homicide was committed.
But just as Morrison starts laying out his case, the defense team is dealt a blow. The judge rules that some evidence is inadmissible, including that mysterious last text message sent from Blaze's phone on the night of the murder. "I did something really horrible for the story, but also no one can ever know."
The jury then hears how Sam Woodward was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, which the defense says hindered his ability to make and maintain friendships and contributed to Sam's acute sense of isolation and loneliness.
This helps to explain how starved Sam was for the camaraderie, the brotherhood, and acceptance, and how profoundly vulnerable he was to recruitment into groups like Adam Waffen.
The defense claims Sam Woodward's participation in Adam Waffen wasn't as much about ideology as it was about connecting with others and just having a good time. Morrison calls former Adam Waffen member Tyler Wiesing to the stand.
So would you characterize the camp as very serious in terms of the ideology, goals, training, that sort of thing?
That was the intent and the image. In the reality, it was a bunch of people getting drunk and not taking things seriously.
As for those Tinder messages, well, the prosecution argued that Sam Woodward was online to hunt and terrorize victims. Morrison says that never happened, and he argues that in this case, it was Blaze who pursued Sam.
June 15, 2017, Blaze Bernstein saw Sam's profile on Tinder, and Blaze Bernstein initiated the first contact with Sam Woodward, not the other way around. And And then Sam says, thing is, you're not too shabby looking yourself, Blaze. Blaze says, oh, well, thanks, Sam. That's sweet of you. Emoji. Sam says, yeah, you're cute, TBH, to be honest.
According to the defense, Sam Woodward was repressing his own feelings of homosexuality, which could help explain the reason behind, quote, Sam's diary of hate.
He's trying to kind of keep this as like this hidden away part of his life, that these hate diary entries are simply narrative constructs to cover up that part of him should Adam Waffen members get suspicious.
Morrison argues that Sam Woodward was tortured by his sexual identity because of what he claims he heard at home. He calls Woodward's mother, Michelle, to the witness stand.
Ms. Woodward, was it ever communicated to your children that homosexuality is a sin?
Yes.
And who communicated that?
My husband.
The defense calls James Markle to the stand, please.
Family friend James Markle tells the court about an incident he says Michelle recounted to him about Sam's father, Blake.
Was there any particular word that Michelle Woodward told you that she would hear Blake call Sam?
He would say he would say gay.
But when called to the stand, Sam Woodward's father, Blake, denies using any homophobic slurs.
Would you make derogatory remarks about homosexual people in Sam's presence?
No. But ultimately, the case would hinge on the testimony of the one person who was there the night Blaze Bernstein was killed, Sam Woodward.
The defense is calling on Samuel Woodward.
For the defense, calling their client to testify is a risky move. It can be viewed as a Hail Mary or as a very shrewd tactic to play on the jury's sympathies.
And Mr. Woodward, can I ask you if you're able to move the hair out of your face a little bit?
Sam Woodward's defense attorney, Ken Morrison, takes Woodward through the story of his life, arriving at a key question.
Sam, was there ever a time in your life that you can recall where you wondered whether you might be gay?
No. No, I can't say really there was, no.
This may have just blown up Ken Morrison's defense, which hinges on the argument that Sam Woodward was struggling with his sexual identity. And that will become hugely important because of what Morrison is about to argue Blaze did that night, which he says provoked the attack.
You will learn that Blaze Bernstein was not killed because of who he was, but because of what he did to Sam Woodward after they met up.
What will Sam Woodward say happened that night?
When you drove to Blaze Bernstein's house to pick him up, Sam, were you planning to kill him that night?
It's day 28 in the trial of Sam Woodward, and defense attorney Ken Morrison is questioning his client about the night that he and Blaze ended up in Borrego Park.
I'm pretty sure I said we should hang out at some point, or rather it'd be cool if you wanted to, and right after that, he said to me that he was actually free this night right now, and at that point, I said, all right, cool.
Sam Woodward testifies that after picking up Blaze near his house, the two men eventually arrived at the park. There, on a bench, Woodward claims the night took a dark turn.
Woodward said he smoked some marijuana, was starting to kind of get drowsy, kind of nod off. He feels something and opens his eyes.
I saw a hand right on my crotch with my pants unbuckled. I looked right up and I saw him, and he had his phone in his hand. He kept saying something that I can only remember as, I got you already. I got you, I got you, I got you, I got you, hypocrite. I heard him maybe use the word outed in the same sentence. I couldn't exactly remember.
If Sam Woodward is to be believed, Blaze was threatening him, and that's what made Woodward snap.
What, if anything, did you think he was doing with his cell phone?
I thought he might photograph me. I thought he might send text messages. I thought he might be trying to record me.
So at any point in time, did you see Blaze actually appear as though he was texting any messages?
Yes.
Sam Woodward says his fear was that there had been an image or video taken and that his family would learn about it.
I grew up in a home with my mother and my father and my brother. Loved them more than I can almost speak about. My father, though, if he'd heard about something like that got out somehow, I couldn't fathom that.
Sam Woodward then describes how he says things escalated.
I found one of the knives that I had used to open up the container of marijuana. I just kept driving and driving and driving and driving the knife down.
When you say driving the knife down, Sam, were you stabbing Blaze?
At that point, yes, I was.
In an effort to try to dispel any argument that this was a hate crime, Morrison asks Sam Woodward two final questions.
When you drove to Blaze Bernstein's house to pick him up, Sam, were you planning to kill him that night?
No, not at all.
Did you hate him because he was gay?
No, not at all.
But now, here's where the gamble of putting Woodward on the stand could either pay off or lose big.
Okay, so walk me through it, sir.
On cross-examination, Jennifer Walker attacks Woodward's credibility.
The left side of his neck was closest to you, right? If he's sitting to your right?
Everything was a blur.
Well, how did you stab him 14 separate times on the left side of his neck when he was sitting right next to you?
I can't remember.
And how did you stab him 5 separate times on the right side of his neck when he was sitting to your right?
I can't remember.
After a trial full of fits and starts, spanning almost 3 months, the case goes to the jury. The jury deliberates for about 8 hours.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Samuel Woodward, guilty of the crime of first-degree murder.
It's an emotional moment, even for the court clerk.
A felony and violate. Just 1 sec.
Sure.
I've prosecuted a lot of murder cases, and I can't say I've ever seen a court clerk react like that.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find it to be true that the defendant, Samuel Woodward, committed hate crime, first-degree murder.
We are thrilled with the verdict, which holds Samuel Woodward accountable for the brutal, violent, painful murder of our son. Justice has been served. Thank you.
Breaking news now, an emotional afternoon in an Orange County courtroom. The sentencing has just been handed down for the man convicted in the hate crime murder of Blaze Bernstein.
This time the court does sentence the defendant to state prison for the term prescribed by law, which is life without the possibility of parole.
The jury said that they saw this as a hate crime and that hate was not going to get you anywhere in this world.
In the 7 years since Blaze Bernstein's murder, the family of Sam Woodward has never spoken out beyond their court testimony. But the Bernsteins say the Woodwards did leave something for them back in 2018.
Have they reached out to you, by the way?
Yeah.
We found a note under our doormat.
What did it say, this note?
Orange County Sheriff's investigator Sergeant Dylan Jansen knows Borrego Park a lot better than he would like to. In the initial days of the investigation, how many hours would you say you spent at this park here?
Countless. I spent a lot of time over here just looking, thinking, analyzing, you know, what was the truth, what's not the truth.
We may never know exactly what happened the night Blaze was murdered or what that last text message meant. But Sergeant Jansen can answer one question based on the evidence.
That cell phone, even though it was damaged, we were able to send it to various companies to restructure the cell phone and extract any and all information on there.
Were there any pictures of that night?
No. No.
This park is pretty meaningful for you.
So we stop here and go check out the garden of rocks that are now over in the corner.
Do you feel that you get a little bit of closure each time you put one more rock down?
I don't even know what closure is. You lose a child. I think maybe closure for me will be just being able to look at all of these things and be happy.
Almost 7 years after I walked in Borrego Park with the Bernsteins, the memorial of painted stones honoring their son has blossomed. Jeannie and Gideon have both moved away from Foothill Ranch, but they tell me they still find solace in this place.
In the Jewish tradition, it is a thing that you put rocks at a gravesite.
And there's a permanence to it.
It gives us some feeling of connection to people, the people that will hear our story and understand the importance of eradicating hate in this world. This is about love.
Since 2018, the Bernsteins have been building a movement. They call it Blaze It Forward.
The Blaze It Forward campaign was based off of the idea that as a community, we can make a difference and we can change the way that this world works. We were able to take that in my brother's honor to try and encourage people to just do one good thing every day.
They participate in local pride parades, and Jeannie hosts a podcast featuring people doing good in the world. Sam Woodward's parents, Blake and Michelle Woodward, never responded to an interview request with ABC News, but they did write a letter to the court submitted at sentencing. It reads, in part, "In the past, you could look into Sam's eyes and be surprised at the level of sensitivity and warmth. It's one of his best traits. Now, he's too vulnerable to let you look him in the eyes. He committed a crime, but he is not a person without value, unworthy of respect."
Speaking about the Woodward parents, they left a note at your house in 2018, right?
They did. At the time, I thought it was infuriating because one of the things that they said in that letter was that that both families are going through a hard time right now. I don't think that she had any idea how hard of a time we were having.
But there's another letter that holds more meaning for Jeannie and Gideon, discovered after the trial, tucked among the colorful painted stones of Blaze's memorial.
This is a copy of a note that was left for us in the park by one of the jurors. She basically says in this letter to Blaze that she's really sorry that she didn't get to know him.
Thank you everyone for coming to class today.
So Blaze would be 27. Do you ever think about what he would be like today had he lived?
He'd be doing something fantastic. I know that about Blaze, and he'd be making people happy. That's what he did. Blaze is always on my mind. I think about him from the minute I wake up until I go to bed at night. He was my person.
You take it. It's on record.
He was a piece of man. He's gone. But I'm still here, and whatever he's done to make an impact on this world is what we're going to leverage and try to make sure that people never forget about our son and what happened.
Sam Woodward's defense lawyer, Ken Morrison, David, says his client didn't get a fair trial. Woodward has appealed.
Morrison claims there are several appellate issues because of evidence the jury was not allowed to see. In the meantime, that is our program for tonight. Thanks so much for watching. I'm David Muir.
And I'm Deborah Roberts. From all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, good night.
Tonight is a breakthrough on the horizon in one of the country's most high-profile unsolved mysteries.
JonBenet Ramsey, the name we all know, the case that shook America that Christmas nearly 30 years ago. Could there finally be a major turn in the case? 2020 begins right now.
I just kept saying, no, no, ask God to raise her.
I wanna be a cowboy sweetheart.
JonBenet Ramsey, the story you can't forget, the case you think you know.
With all that attention, all that scrutiny, why hasn't this crime been solved?
One simple reason: the police have refused help that was offered, and it could have helped.
But now is the new documentary series changing the picture.
Go back to the damn drawing board.
So early on, they locked into this crazy idea that the parents were responsible. They get tunnel vision.
With new DNA technology, is a solution closer than ever.
We think the crime can be solved.
Inspiring John Ramsey.
Tonight, the new John Ramsey interview.
You dwell on your loss, and you just can't do that.
And what you've never seen before. From the iconic Barbara Walters sit-down.
This was a monster that killed our daughter.
And the police think that it's you.
Now the detective who defied the police.
They knew at the time that there was DNA and that it was not from Ramsey's DNA.
And he just said, I have a name, I want you to write it down. And I did, and he said, that's where you start. All but one person on that list is innocent.
Then you got your killer.
She was a beautiful child of God. We knew she was special. We knew she was going to make a difference. We certainly didn't expect it to be this way. And yet, here's a child who is known literally around the world. So she did become special.
JonBenet Ramsey. She enjoys paintings, the rabbit.
She is the special little girl, forever 6 years old. While JonBenet Ramsey remains frozen in time, her father has endured nearly 3 decades without justice, without answers, and without his daughter. I sat down for a new interview with the now 81-year-old John Ramsey.
Hello, sir. Byron Fitz.
Byron John Ramsey. I had JonBenet bless my life for 6 years, and she really was a blessing. Just an amazing little kid.
She was daddy's girl.
She was daddy's girl, big time.
Do you allow yourself to think, what if this hadn't happened?
I don't. I did run into one of her little friends on the street who was now, 30 and an adult. And that was a little bit of a jolt to think, wow, could have been JonBenet. She's still my little girl. That's the picture I have in my head when I think of her.
Ramsey has renewed hope that his daughter's killer can finally be found, confident that advances in DNA technology are the key to solving the mystery.
There's been a number of old cold cases solved using this genealogy research.
There was no more important story in the country than the disappearance and the death of your daughter.
Police have still not named a suspect.
It's now been 12 days since JonBenet Ramsey was murdered.
Officers have spent more than 3,000 hours processing evidence and interviewing more than 90 people.
With all that attention, all that scrutiny, why hasn't this crime been solved?
One simple reason: the police have refused help that was offered. They had no experience. They didn't have a homicide department.
That police response and its aftermath is the focus of a new Netflix docuseries, Cold Case: Who Killed JonBenet Ramsey?
Someone killed this 6-year-old child.
You have a small-town police force that gets a crime that they're not used to.
Is it fair to question the Boulder Police Department's experience, ability to investigate a homicide?
I don't think so. Just because you have one homicide in a year, I think is actually a sign of remarkable strength in a community.
This was the first murder in Boulder that year, and it was December 26. So they don't have a lot of murders, particularly where a little girl is tortured to death.
John Ramsey worked with award-winning documentarian Joe Berlinger, who says he wanted to shed new light on what he calls one of the most brutalized families in American history.
Obviously, he wasn't legally wrongfully convicted, but he was wrongfully convicted, and his wife, Patsy, the family, were wrongfully convicted in the court of public opinion.
You still feel like it's a cloud over your family name?
Yeah.
Because I guess because there are still people in the country who still believe
absolutely
that your wife were responsible.
No doubt. And we could have the killer confessed, arrested, in prison, and there'd still be 5 to 10% of the population that, yeah, it was the father, or yeah, it was the mother.
The hit docuseries has sparked a new generation of interest on social media.
Okay, one of my girlfriends and I have a new JonBenet theory, and I want to float it. I just finished the JonBenet Ramsey new documentary on Netflix, and holy
I need to know what happened to JonBenet Ramsey.
With the wave of renewed scrutiny, the Boulder Police Department issued a video statement last month.
So much of how law enforcement works has changed in the last 30 years. There are a number of things that people have pointed to throughout the years that could have been done better, and we acknowledge that is true. However, it is important to emphasize that while we cannot go back to that horrible day in 1996, our goal is to find JonBenet Ramsey's killer.
That horrible day in 1996 began at Christmas time in the storybook neighborhood where the Ramsey family lived, in Boulder, Colorado.
There's a saying here in Colorado that Boulder is 30 square miles of fantasy surrounded by reality.
It's very wealthy, it's well-to-do.
John and Patsy Ramsey lived in a 6,700 square feet Tudor there on 15th Street.
John Ramsey was the CEO of a computer services company. He'd suffered tragedy before when his 22-year-old daughter, Beth, died in a car accident. In 1980, he married his new wife, Patsy.
By all accounts, they were a happy couple. Patsy was a high society woman.
I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a friend, I'm a wife and a mother. John used to just tell people that I invested in futures, the futures of my children. That's how I usually answer my occupation.
John and Patsy Ramsey had 2 children together. Their firstborn was Burke, 9 years old, and JonBenet, 6.5, in kindergarten.
My name is John Andrew Ramsey, JonBenet's half-brother. JonBenet was just an energetic and fun kid.
Patsy Ramsey was a former beauty queen, Miss West Virginia. By the time JonBenet was 4 years old, she was in the pageant system herself.
I really believe that if we hadn't seen the beauty pageant photos of JonBenet Ramsey, it might have just gone into the ether as another child murder. This one captivated us because we saw the beauty pageant pictures.
Hello, I'm Patsy Ramsey. This is JonBenet. She's 4, Burke is 7.
Christmas was Patsy's favorite time, and she really went all out. She had a Christmas tree for every room, and every tree had a theme. The windows were done with garland, the staircases had garland, there were red ribbons everywhere.
And from all of us at our house to everyone at your house, Merry Christmas and the happiest of New Year's.
There was plenty to celebrate that Christmas of 1996. Patsy had been battling ovarian cancer and was finally in remission. On Christmas morning, the family opened presents in their home.
They were going to a friend's house for dinner that night.
We were going to leave early the next morning for a trip to our summer cottage in Michigan. So we came home, set the alarm, and went to sleep.
This is your first extended interview.
In 2000, Barbara Walters spoke to the couple about that terrible day.
You get up, you're dressed. What happens?
I went down our steps from our bedroom to the second floor. Then I started walking down the spiral staircase. And as I came to the bottom of the stairs, there were 3 pages neatly laid across one of the runs of the stairway.
She picked up the note and she started to read it.
I just remember when I read, "We have your daughter," it just, this overwhelming fear.
And then?
And then I just screamed for John, screamed.
Take me back to that day.
I was shaving or getting dressed and I heard Patsy scream, and we called the police immediately.
We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please. Explain to me what's going on. What's your name? Are you Patsy Ramsey? I'm the mother. Oh my God!
I was the call taker that night shift when the call came in.
Police, what's going on 15th Street? What's going on there, ma'am? We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please. Explain to me what's going on, okay? There's a note left and our daughter's gone. There's a ransom note here. It's a ransom note? Oh my God! Please.
She's hysterical, and she says there's a kidnapping.
Please. I'm sending an officer over, okay? Please. Do you know how long she's been gone? No, I don't. Please, we just got out and she's right here. Oh my God, please.
The note said, if you do anything, if police come, if FBI come, your daughter will die. You called 911.
Yes, I did. I had to do something. I had to take action.
And I mean, all this happened in a matter of moments.
Patsy Ramsey called 911 at 5:52 a.m., and the first officer from the Boulder Police Department arrives 3 minutes later at 5:55.
We called friends for help at that point. Your daughter is gone.
Desperate.
She's in the hands of a madman.
My phone rang. Pam, they've got her. What do you mean they've got her? They've kidnapped JonBenet. She's gone.
What was the atmosphere like as you sat and waited?
Well, it was awful. First of all, we didn't know whether the kidnapper was going to call that day, because the note said, "I will call you tomorrow. Get plenty of rest." I was deathly afraid that tomorrow was in fact the 27th.
You lose all perception of time, of place. You've just been dealt a horrible, crushing blow.
At 6 o'clock on the morning of December 26th, the police came in and did a cursory search of the residence. It was a lavish home with about 18 rooms.
The police did a terrible, terrible job securing that scene. And if you don't secure the scene, you don't get good evidence.
The mistakes they made were outrageous, they were mystifying, they were mistake after mistake after mistake.
People were streaming through that house. They were in the kitchen, they were in the living room. There were some friends of Patsy's that were helping her wipe up the kitchen. There could have been fingerprints there.
You had friends that were Windexing the sink and washing dishes. And
People were making toast in the kitchen. And yes, a kidnapping is a crime scene, but we were so focused on getting JonBenet back. That was the task.
What we have learned is that everyone should have been sequestered into an area so that people weren't roaming around the house.
And that was a mistake on my part. The reason I didn't is because these people were the Ramsey's support system. There was no information at all to indicate the family was involved at that point.
It was a crime scene, and it was getting contaminated. The note was being passed around and reviewed by all of their friends.
Of all of the evidence left behind, that ransom note is the most baffling. Number one, it is too damn long. A ransom note is not that long. A ransom note says, I have your child, I want $1 million, I'll call you later.
The note was 3 pages and written in longhand.
That ransom note was the War and Peace of ransom notes.
It begins, Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully.
You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills, and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills.
You think about this number and how is it relevant? And it's relevant because John Ramsey got a bonus from his company for $118,000. How many people knew that? I'm going to guess not a lot of people. This footage of Barbara Walters' interview with the Ramseys in 2000 has never aired until now.
The ransom note asked for an odd figure, $118,000. That was a bonus that you had received.
Well, that was one of the theories that I came up with, that it was close to the net amount I'd received that year as a bonus. 118 means something to the killer. We know that. We believe that. Whether it's tied to my bonus or something only the killer knows, we don't know.
Did you know that your husband got this kind of a bonus?
Not at the time, no.
Lou Smith, a detective who would later be brought into the case to re-examine the evidence, noticed something else unusual about the ransom note. Some of the phrases appear to mimic lines in movies about kidnappings. Lou Smith recorded his observations about the case.
John? The movie Ransom was playing in Boulder.
I have your son.
Oh, Jesus.
I want $2 million.
Oh, God.
In that particular movie, a fat cat industrialist, his son was kidnapped. There's a lot of the same verbiage in this note as was in even the note that was written in that particular movie.
If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies.
A kidnapper says a similar line to Clint Eastwood in the movie Dirty Harry.
If you talk to anyone, I don't care if it's a Pekingese pissing against a lamppost, the girl dies.
You and your family are under constant scrutiny, as well as the authorities. Don't try to grow a brain, John. That's a line used by a terrorist in the movie Speed.
Do not attempt to grow a brain. Our guy's a real watcher of that particular type of movies.
The ransom note was a vital piece of evidence. Police need to figure out who wrote it and when.
On the morning of December 26, the minutes ticked by as the Ramseys waited to hear from the kidnapper.
It was awful.
The kidnappers had written that they would telephone you by 10 a.m.
All I prayed for was he would call.
But it would be a discovery inside the house that would change everything. The ransom note that Patsy Ramsey says she found indicated there would be a call between 8 and 10 a.m.
The police had prepped me on how to respond in a phone call, and very important is you hear JonBenet's voice.
Police officers were leaving between 9:30 and 9:45 before that time period of the phone call had even expired. One lone detective was left on the scene.
Detective Linda Arndt is left behind in the house with John and Patsy Ramsey.
Arndt didn't have extensive homicide experience managing a kidnapping and what was about to unfold. This was likely pretty overwhelming for one lone police officer.
I was praying. Linda Arndt had said to me, we're hopeful that the kidnappers will just drop JonBenet off someplace. And I kept looking out the window, clutching this cross and just imagining that she was going to come running down the street.
They're waiting for a telephone call from the kidnapper. What's going to happen next?
My former ABC News colleague, Elizabeth Vargas, did one of the first extensive interviews with Detective Linda Arndt.
10 o'clock comes and goes, and there's no acknowledgement that the deadline imposed by the author of the ransom note is come and gone.
Nobody said it's 10 o'clock and the kidnappers haven't called?
Nobody said that.
According to Arndt, neither John nor Patsy Ramsey seemed to market or freak out about it. She says later she found it curious that John Ramsey checked his mail in the kitchen in the middle of the crisis.
How are you supposed to act when you think?
Oh, I don't know for sure, but I really thought I could get JonBenet back if I kept my wits about me. You know, there was a pile of envelopes that had come through our front door slot. I was looking for another communication for the kidnapper. She should have been doing that.
Linda Arndt tells the restless John, why don't you look around the house, see if anything is missing or looks strange.
Check the house, top to bottom. Look for anything that might belong to JonBenet that is in place where it shouldn't be.
Were you at that point giving him perhaps a little bit of distraction, busy work?
I wanted to lessen his anxiety by giving him a job to do, a task, a meaningless task.
John took a friend with him. They went to the basement, and John opened the door.
You opened the door to the small room.
I knew instantly what I'd found. I'd found my daughter. She was lying on a white blanket. The blanket was wrapped around her. Her hands were tied above her head. She had tape over her mouth. I immediately knelt down over her, felt her cheek, took the tape off immediately off her mouth. I tried to untie the cord that was around her arms. I couldn't get the knot untied. Picked her up, and I ran upstairs and laid her on the floor, and still had a hope that she was alive.
And I see John Ramsey carrying JonBenet up the last 3 steps from the basement. She looked like she was sleeping. She had some marks on her face and on her neck. I knelt next to her and I leaned down to her face. And John leaned down opposite, and he asked if she was dead. And I said, yes, she's dead. And as we looked at each other, I remember, and I wore a shoulder holster, tucking my gun right next to me and consciously counting, I've got 18 bullets.
Why did you do that?
Because I didn't know if we'd all be alive when people showed up.
She clearly felt in danger at that moment. She made it clear that she thought John Ramsey killed his daughter and that he might kill her.
Linda Arndt's ability to look in someone's eyes and determine they were a killer is a remarkable talent.
We reached out to Detective Arndt to ask her about her reaction back then, but she did not respond. Ramsey has long been upset with her.
She said, yeah, I saw it in John's eyes. I knew he was guilty. That was the detective that was there that morning.
How is it that you have all these cops searching a home and nobody finds the body, but you asked John Ramsey to go look for things out of the ordinary, and he finds his daughter in a room that had never been opened by anybody in law enforcement? That's crazy.
He lays her on the living room floor where just a few minutes before, friends and neighbors have been walking and, you know, bringing in fibers and whatever to contaminate the scene. And then the coup de grace. He grabs a blanket, which is full of who knows what kind of contaminants, and throws it over the body.
Patsy was being kept out of the room, and I didn't want Patsy to see JonBenet laying there like that.
I remember walking in and seeing her lying there in front of the Christmas tree. I knelt down over her and just laid my body on her body and my cheek against her cheek, and it was cold. And Father Raw was there. And he started saying the last rites, I believe. And I just kept saying, no, no, you know, ask God. Ask God to raise her.
So the kidnapping of JonBenet Ramsey has turned into the murder of JonBenet.
JonBenet Ramsey was violated and murdered in a horrific way. Many injuries to this little girl's body. The x-ray of her skull shows a massive fracture.
This is an 8-inch skull fracture, so we're talking a major blunt force. This is just a massive blow.
But the ultimate cause of her death was strangulation with something called a garrote.
It's a device of a string, and it's wrapped around what ends up being a piece of a paintbrush. And what happens is, as JonBenet is losing consciousness, she's leaning forward. And so this gets tighter and tighter, and you can see how it cuts into my hand. You can see exactly why it cut into her neck. And that ultimately, according to the ME, is what killed her.
If you look at the autopsy report, JonBenet died while being tortured. She was alive while she was being tortured.
There were signs that JonBenet had also been sexually abused. The broken pieces of paintbrush that were used for the garrote were also used to sexually assault her.
There were 4 people in that house, and 1 died overnight. From the very beginning, they suspected the parents.
Within minutes of JonBenet's body being found, this was who they were going to go after. And that's what they did.
The police are thinking, we got to talk to those parents, and we got to talk to them right now before they start getting their story straight together.
When JonBenet's body was brought out past the candy canes decorating the front of the house, there were only a couple of reporters outside to capture that. And then the media frenzy started.
JonBenet Ramsey, the little girl in Colorado, was murdered.
Beauty queen JonBenet. JonBenet's murder has frightened residents of Boulder.
News outlets from around the world had descended upon Boulder and were just hiding in trees and bushes and digging through our trash, following me around town. I mean, it was war.
The JonBenet Ramsey case was completely out of control.
You also have to remember the O.J. Simpson case had wrapped up. The 24-hour news cycle, their content had dried up. And so along came the Ramsey family, and we fit right into that slot.
JonBenet Ramsey was a precocious 6-year-old. She had been strangled to death in the basement of her own home.
You have the shock, this incredibly horrendous crime. And then you have these videos that surface of this beautiful young girl.
JonBenet Ramsey! Dark blonde hair and green eyes.
Dancing in her costumes, and those were the first viral videos.
She'd like to become an Olympic ice skater.
People who didn't really grow up in the South and understand that industry, the industry of beauty pageants, thought it was the most horrible exploitation of a child they'd ever seen. So when those images started playing across the television, people started thinking, what's wrong with that family?
For many, this was their first glimpse into the world of child pageants. Long before shows
Tested 15.
like Toddlers and Tiaras.
Number 65, Alana.
But John Ramsey tells me it was something that would bring joy to JonBenet and his wife, Patsy.
The pageant photos came out, and that made it more juicy.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was just something that Patsy and JonBenet had fun with.
JonBenet never participated in what I would call a beauty contest. She participated in a talent show.
She would sing and dance?
She would sing, she would dance.
I want to be a cowboy, sweetheart. I want to learn to rope and to ride.
These were such a small, minuscule part of what JonBenet was all about. I think it's just because the photographs were so available and so beautiful that it took on a life of its own.
It's part of what turned it into an international circus.
This little girl's image was everywhere overnight.
The biggest negative factor about John and Patsy Ramsey was that they had allowed their daughter to be in child beauty pageant contests, and people did not like them.
But to think they would murder their own daughter was unimaginable. Yet police found evidence that, in their minds, pointed towards the Ramseys.
When you start with children of this age, when they die, tend to die at the hands of their parents. So the focus is naturally going to be on the parents to begin with. Now, in the house, the ransom note is written on a pad that belongs to Patsy. This is the notepad. This location right here is where the note was physically found by Patsy. The pen that was used was in the house.
The garrote that was used in JonBenet's murder also got the attention of investigators because of what it was made of.
It basically is an artist's paintbrush that's broken, and what's important is that it actually came from Patsy's art supply.
And there were even fibers on the backside of the duct tape that had been on JonBenet's mouth from Patsy's clothing.
And that was important, but Patsy lived in the house, so those could have been there anyway.
The police started thinking, well, maybe this is just a cover-up, that the Ramseys harmed their child some way, then panicked and tried to create basically a kidnapping scenario.
Patsy and John should have been taken to the police station immediately for separate interviews, for examination of their body for defensive wounds, for collection of their clothing. That never happened.
At this point, they haven't interviewed the mother or father. Not surprisingly, they're still very grief-stricken. They have not been in any kind of condition to be interviewed.
My father, myself, we all marched into that police station, gave blood, we gave hair, we gave fingerprints. The thing that really stuck with me is two detectives hand me their business cards, and one says narcotics officer and the other says auto theft. And I buried my head into my hands because I knew at that point we were in a bad spot.
Though the police had spoken to John Ramsey after JonBenet's body was found, what they really wanted to do was formally interrogate the couple.
The police are thinking, we got to talk to those parents, and we got to talk to them right now before they start getting their story straight together.
Your lawyers advised you then not to submit to police questions. Why not? People say, wouldn't you have wanted to tell them everything?
Well, I don't recall that our lawyers told us that at the time. We said, you know, yeah, we want to keep working with you, but can't you come here? We can't go out. Patsy was in bed. Patsy was barely able to move. We were perfectly willing and anxious to work with the police to find the killer. We had a higher priority at that point, and that was to bury our daughter.
The family is flying the body back to Atlanta for burial.
On New Year's Eve, JonBenet was laid to rest just outside Atlanta, Georgia.
This service is in loving memory of JonBenet Patricia Ramsey.
We flew back to Atlanta to bury JonBenet. Atlanta being our home. Atlanta being where my oldest sister Beth is buried.
We give thanks today for JonBenet, for the love that she had for her parents.
I want to go back to the funeral.
Whatever we do, we're gonna go through it together. We may not get far, but sure as the star, wherever we are, it's together.
Wherever we are, it's together.
We sang that. She and I sang that together. We'd sing it driving in the car, and we just knew that we would always be together in everything. I wanted my children to know that I was with them through thick and thin, regardless of what happened in life. You know, unconditional love.
Oh, look at that. You can go places now.
Everybody wanted to see these parents. Everybody wanted to talk to these parents, especially the police.
When you realized that you two were the prime suspects, what did you think?
The Boulder police did not interrogate the Ramseys, but they remained the main suspects. Many people found the Ramseys' behavior peculiar and suspicious, and from that, many presumed they must be guilty.
When you realized that you two were the prime suspects, what did you think? What did you feel? What did you say?
Well, we were outraged. We were shocked. How could they think that? We were a normal family.
I just didn't believe it. You just can't believe it. I mean, you were suffering from having lost our child. And then for someone to accuse you, it's just, you can't believe that would happen.
Then 6 days after the murder, they go on CNN and say they didn't do it.
If anyone knows anything, please, please help us.
We've sensed from our friends that this tragedy has touched not just ourselves and our friends, but many people.
As a mother, my heart went out to this couple.
And if I were a resident of Boulder, I will tell my friends to keep your babies close to you. There's someone out there.
Some people thought it was odd they were talking to the public rather than to the police.
You did an interview on CNN. Why did you do that?
We did it reluctantly and at the insistence of some friends who could see that we were being painted as guilty.
Unfortunately, at that time, we were so, and when we look back at it, we were so distraught and medicated. It was probably not giving the impression that he had hoped we would achieve.
Police end their 10-day search of the Ramsey house and remove the crime scene tape.
It is unknown if the family intends to resume residency at the home. We have no comment on the whereabouts of the family at this time.
Starting from the beginning of this case, we, the media, lapped up what the Boulder Police Department wanted to tell us about what they were doing in the JonBenet Ramsey case.
For the most part, the police didn't say much. They didn't leak a lot of information. But when they did, it was major. They thought the mother did it.
Some people who believe Patsy killed her daughter believe it was over bedwetting and then staged it to look like an intruder. The bedwetting theory was a big theory at the time.
I'm a cancer survivor of stage 4 cancer. When you are standing on the brink of death with a terminal illness, your priorities suddenly line up. Bedwetting is totally insignificant. I love my children. I wouldn't harm them for anything in the world.
But many Americans were riveted by the possibility that the Ramseys might have done this.
Some of the authorities have said that you staged this, that you loosely tied your daughter's hands, that you put the noose, the garrote, to make it look as if some terrible person had done this, that this whole picture was staged.
Well, that's absurd. This was done by a terrible person. The garrote was deeply embedded in JonBenet's throat. Her hands were tightly bound. I couldn't get the knot untied. I tried to get it untied even before I brought her upstairs. And to say that we accidentally murdered our daughter and then staged this is nonsense.
If we had staged it, why would we have disturbed it?
Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey, did either of you have anything to do with the death of your daughter?
No.
No. Mr. Ramsey, did you kill JonBenet?
No, I did not.
Mrs. Ramsey, did you kill your daughter?
No, I did not kill my daughter.
How do you feel when I ask you these questions?
Insulted, pain, hurtful. How can I tell you how much I love my daughter? I love her from the depths of my being. It's just unimaginable.
There was a Gallup poll at the time that said something like 70% of the American public thought that you or your wife were guilty.
I remember reading that. And it's like, well, I get it. That's what you were told over and over again.
There's so many puzzle pieces here that just don't fit.
Do you really think your daughter's murderer will be found?
Yes, I do. Because the killer has never been pursued. An objective, wide investigation hasn't taken place. The parents have been focused on. That's all that's been done.
I think it's solvable. I really believe it's solvable given today's technology.
There are a lot of people in this country who hope that that crime is solved in your lifetime.
The suspect might be out there and be someone who's completely unknown, who has never been on anyone's radar.
What we know is that just within a few mile radius
of the Ramseys' home, there was approximately 38 to 40 sex offenders in that area. And the question is, have they all been completely vetted?
And decades later, granddaughters of one of the investigators joined the search for the killer.
There's a lot more evidence to cover and more myths to debunk.
But I do want to get the truth out there.
Was it an accident? Was it intentional? Premeditated?
I want to say something to the person or persons that took this baby from us. The list of suspects narrows. Soon there will be no one on the list but you.
Our killer is JonBenet. How many victims has he had in the past? And how many victims is he going to have in the future?
Tonight, the new focus on one of the most haunting unsolved cases of the last 30 years. Will the spotlight push the police for further DNA testing?
I just need some specifics from the police. Are you doing this? Are you doing this?
Now, new interviews.
They targeted you, John. They wanted to hurt you. And they did that by killing your daughter.
What you've never heard before from Patsy Ramsey.
The police were more concerned with feeding the frenzy of media sharks every day than in finding the killer of our daughter.
The detective who left the police to pursue his own investigation.
Lou dedicated a big part of his life to finding JonBenet's murderer.
Detective Lou Smith was like, whoa.
He just said, I have a name. I want you to write it down.
Is the answer in the list he left behind?
Our grandfather was a detective on one of the biggest unsolved murders in our generation.
Do you think if they'd taken the help offered 28 years ago, this case would have been solved by now?
Oh, yeah. I have no doubt.
It's a good opportunity to really find out who did this.
JonBenet was an entertainer. She would entertain at the drop of a hat.
She loved to sing and dance and perform. It was a natural for her.
I competed with JonBenet. She had all these wonderful costumes and outfits, and she had this presence.
Third runner-up, JonBenet.
It wasn't really a competition to her. It was more of like, this is fun, like let's go on stage and do that.
My name is JonBenet Ramsey, and I'm 5½.
What is your favorite animal at the zoo?
The monkeys, because they laugh and stuff and hang around.
Today, JonBenet Ramsey would have been 34 years old.
I was her age. She would be my age now. She would be pursuing her own career. She never got to grow up. She is frozen in time now.
Well, the police were convinced pretty early on that Patsy and/or John were involved. And you had a district attorney's office that was saying, not so fast. And that created enormous tension between the two.
Did you hear anything yesterday? I think there are some new developments.
Alex Hunter, the district attorney, wanted someone to come in with fresh eyes in this case and look at it from the perspective of a defense attorney. Who might have killed JonBenet as an intruder, not just the parents, but from the outside?
Boulder DA Alex Hunter brought Lou Smith out of retirement to help solve the Ramsey case.
One of the great challenges is to try to do the case right. And, you know, I think we're making efforts to meet that challenge by involving people like Lou Smith.
My name is Lou Smith. I'm a retired homicide detective from the Colorado Springs Police Department.
Legendary guy. And he said, I follow the evidence. I've got to follow the evidence. Doesn't matter what my opinion is, what I might think. I follow the evidence. And he did. And that takes a lot of discipline.
Smith had a history of closing cases.
He had such tenacity. He was a bulldog. Once he got something in his mind, you know, once he got the reins in his teeth, he was not letting go.
Lou Smith was my father. He was just known as, you know, the detective that solved cases.
When he got to a murder scene, he spent time dictating everything he saw. Where the sun was in the sky, what the weather conditions were like, what the neighboring houses looked like.
The legend of Lou Smit is now the stuff of podcasts, with granddaughters Jessa and Lexi unspooling the crime for a new generation.
He advocated for the victim and stood in their shoes.
So that's why we've chosen The Victim's Shoes as our podcast name. Prior to this case, Lou Smit had investigated over 200 homicide cases that led to arrests and convictions. Lou dedicated a big part of his life to finding JonBenet's murderer.
When he started his investigation, he felt like everybody else did, that it was probably one of the two parents.
It seemed as though the parents were probably involved in it. I thought this would be a fairly easy case. I thought it would be a slam dunk. And I even remember talking to my daughter, I kind of joked with her, saying that, you know, if somebody did get in the house, it must have been Santa Claus coming down the chimney.
It was within a couple of days after my dad started on the investigation, when he had a chance to review pictures, the evidence, that he was already saying, I think that they need to look the other way. He was already noting in his journal that he felt that they needed to look at an intruder.
Lou came up with the intruder theory. You can't think about that theory without associating it with Lou Smit.
The first thing that stood out to him was an open window in the basement. There was a suitcase propped up against it.
He didn't buy the Boulder Police Department's conclusion that no one could get in that basement window. He began to say maybe somebody did get into that house.
And I'll show you how easily it can be done.
So what did Lou Smit do? He went and climbed in the window himself with a camera rolling to prove that it could be done.
It really wasn't that difficult coming in that window.
But is Smit's own theory compromised by the very crime scene photos he himself has studied?
There are cobwebs in the window, which could support that no one did go through this window. The big question is, could you have gotten through this window, this small window, without disturbing this cobweb? I think the answer to that is maybe. But the other important point is, how soon was this picture taken after JonBenet was killed? Because spiders can replicate webs very fast.
Also found in the basement by JonBenet's body, a shoe print, a high-tech brand that did not match any of the shoes in the Ramsey's house.
The investigators believe, and maybe rightly so, that that's the bad guy's footprint.
The counter-argument is that footprint image could have been inadvertently left by police officers at the scene, but a more disturbing image in Lou Smit's investigation comes from two marks left on JonBenet's face and back.
The marks themselves, both on the back and on the face, were the same distance apart. Suddenly a little light went on, and it was just like, wait a minute, it was a stun gun.
Smit looked at other murders where a stun gun was known to have been used. He examined photos of a crime victim who had a known stun gun wound.
And the marks are very similar to the face of JonBenet.
He also looked into an experiment performed using stun guns on pigs. These marks were also the same as the marks found on JonBenet.
When we did the pigs, we get perfect marks, just almost like on the back of JonBenet.
This brings back our grandpa's whole motto that things are usually what they seem. Don't make it complicated.
To make things less complicated, Smit transferred all his knowledge and thoughts about the case to VHS tape, leaving behind a 6-hour video presentation of his intruder theory.
There's no reason at all for the Ramseys to use a stun gun, and the Ramseys don't have a stun gun. If it's not a stun gun, what is it? That's the question I always ask. You tell me what it is.
Lou Smit stood up and said, wait a second, we need to look at this again. It actually is possible. It actually is plausible. And in his mind, it's actually the most likely scenario. But there have been challenges from the beginning of this case. There were published reports that the Boulder Police Department refused to accept assistance from outside law enforcement.
Denver police called and offered 2 experienced homicide detectives to come work at Boulder under their direction full-time. They turned it down.
Do you think if they'd taken the help offered 28 years ago, this case would have been solved by now?
Oh, yeah, I have no doubt. I've been told by experienced homicide detectives over the years, this is not a hard case to solve, but they needed to be on it immediately.
Lou Smith thought that the Ramseys were being targeted unfairly.
Thought there was something drastically wrong. I had seen evidence of an intruder.
One thing the police and the district attorney do agree on, both want the Ramseys to come in for a formal videotaped interrogation. And when that day finally comes, it gets heated.
Go back to the damn drawing board. I didn't do it.
Within a few weeks of JonBenet's murder, police had an important clue. The discovery of foreign DNA found underneath her fingernails and in her underwear.
DNA that does not match the Ramsey family, and it shows a foreign male presence. They sat on that for months.
They knew at the time that there was DNA in her panties. That it was mixed foreign DNA, and that it was not from Ramsey's DNA. Not Patsy's, not John's, and not Burke's.
Detective Lou Smith was like, whoa, while you're pouring water all over the intruder theory, you're not revealing that you have unidentified DNA and it doesn't match anybody in the Ramsey family.
Lou is just incensed that the focus is still being, well, it could be Patsy, maybe we need to get her to confess.
The police had eventually interviewed the couple 4 months after JonBenet's death, but now authorities want the Ramseys to come in again for videotaped interrogation.
There were months and months of negotiations. Things about whether they could be videotaped. What are the questions going to be? Should the Boulder police be a part of it? Because the Ramseys said, we don't trust the police. We don't want them there.
Ultimately, the interrogation took place at a different police department, and the Boulder police had to watch it from another building.
The Ramseys finally sit down with the police for 3 days of videotaped interrogations in June 1998, a year and a half after JonBenet's murder.
We were there for as long as they wanted, would have stayed for 2 weeks had they wanted. The myth that we didn't cooperate is nonsense.
When you were interrogated by the police, you were interrogated separately.
Yes.
Today is Wednesday, June the 24th, 1998. I'm president of the Broomfield Police Department. Patricia Ramsey.
Tom Haney, who was one of the most respected homicide detectives out of Denver, was chosen to interview Patsy Ramsey.
Patsy Ramsey had a year and a half to prepare. I knew that it was going to be tough to get a spontaneous response.
Do you ever recall purchasing black duct tape like this? It seems like there can't be a house in the world that doesn't have duct tape because it repairs everything.
Well, I never liked it because it's so gooey. Isn't it gooey?
He started out softly and kindly and curious, and then he got pointed with his questions, and that made Patsy angry.
If I told you right now that we have, in the process of being examined, trace evidence that appears to link you to the death of JonBenet, what would you tell me?
That is totally impossible. Go retest.
How is it impossible?
I did not kill my child. I didn't have a thing to do with it.
She said it was impossible that we had physical evidence linking her to the crime.
I'm talking about scientific evidence.
I don't give a flying flip how scientific it is. Go back to the damn drawing board. I didn't do it. John Ramsey didn't do it, and we didn't have a clue of anybody who did do it.
I am so taken with her swagger. She just tells them, you know, you think you have some evidence on me? Well, you better look again.
We love that child, okay? We're not involved. Read my lips. Let's find out who is. My life has been hell from that day forward. And I can't stand the thought of thinking that somebody's out here walking on the street. God knows they might do it again to some other child. You know, quit screwing around asking me about things that are ridiculous and let's find the person that did this.
Patsy was feisty. She was combative, in stark contrast to John Ramsey, who was interrogated by Lou Smith.
When Lou interviewed someone, he pried anything out of people just by being understanding and really listening.
Now, John, and I know this is touching right back on a very delicate spot, but was this tape wrapped around anywhere? Was it stuck down?
It was very firm across her lips. Reached out, flipped the latch, opened the door, knew immediately what I found.
Okay, and you say immediately?
There was a white blanket. I just knew I found her.
How were you standing?
The interrogation tapes are intriguing to watch, as there's a lot of raw emotion shown by both John and Patsy Ramsey. But the bottom line is both John and Patsy deny that anyone in their family killed JonBenet, and there was nothing revealed that allowed for charges to be brought against them.
And we want to do everything we can to help solve this case for you.
My dad's conclusions after that interview were just firmed up his belief that the Ramseys had nothing to do with this murder.
I'm not saying parents don't kill their kid. Parents do kill their children. So, but they're trying to say Patsy did. Their actions before, during, and after are all consistent with innocent people. You didn't do it.
My dad started getting frustrated as time went on because he felt that the case against the Ramseys was being slanted where no other evidence was coming in.
I thought there was something drastically wrong and that there was a gross injustice in this case. I had seen evidence of an intruder in the house that night.
Lou Smith thought that the Ramseys were being targeted unfairly, and he didn't believe the police were listening to him.
Smith so strongly disagrees with the prosecutor's focus on the Ramseys that he is resigning from the case, saying, "The case tells me John and Patsy Ramsey did not kill their daughter."
He wrote a letter to Alex Hunter telling them that he couldn't be a part of the persecution of these people, is how he termed it.
He wrote, "I intend to stand with this family and somehow help them through this and find the killer of their daughter."
My dad may have resigned from the district attorney's office, but he never stopped work on the case. He walked in JonBenet's shoes, and he owed it to her, he felt, to continue his investigation.
One thing Lou Smith fought to do was tell a grand jury his side of the story, the intruder theory. There were too many unanswered questions. In particular, that male DNA in JonBenet's underwear that didn't match anyone that they knew of. Who could it be?
Grand jurors arrived at the Boulder County Justice Center this morning and were escorted into the courthouse by sheriff's deputies.
There was enormous pressure on District Attorney Alex Hunter to call for a grand jury, and it took him almost 2 years to actually call one. I think it was the media pressure and pressure from the police that forced him to make that call.
A lot of work went into it.
You have to remember, this case was happening just after other high-profile murder cases in the country.
What did you think of your parents at that point by October 31st?
I thought they were these great people that I had killed.
From the Menendez brothers to O.J. Simpson.
O.J. did it!
Those high-profile cases were on most of the country's mind.
Good morning, Counsel.
Most people think the evidence of Simpson's guilt was insurmountable.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
And yet, he walked. Alex remembered that. He told me one time, "I don't want to spend 2 years of my life and $5 million of the taxpayers' money and lose in court."
Alex Hunter sat a grand jury for 13 months.
Are you surprised by anything you've seen?
No. Over 13 months, those people heard over 100 witnesses.
My name is Jonathan Webb. I was a grand juror on the JonBenet Ramsey case. It bothers me that the murder of a little girl like this has gone on unsolved for essentially a quarter century.
members of the grand jury looking like detectives themselves as they finally toured the Ramsey house.
From a crime scene perspective, it was very disturbing how she was found. She's on a concrete floor, a garrote around her neck, and she's 6 years old. That's pretty horrible.
Webb told us that the grand jury spent most of their time focused on two main issues. First, who wrote that ransom note?
We heard from 3 handwriting experts, and even though the handwriting experts couldn't definitively say that she wrote it, they all 3 came to the same conclusion that it could have been Patsy Ramsey.
The Ramsey's defense team had their own experts who said that the comparison between the writing on the ransom note and Patsy's handwriting was not conclusive.
And the grand jury believed that she wrote it.
The second focus for the grand jury, according to Jonathan Webb, was the viability of the intruder theory.
Smith actually presented his intruder theory to the grand jury.
This is the very first photo taken of a training room basement window. The window is wide open. Now, if I was a detective, I'd have said, wow, this is entry.
But the grand jury wasn't buying the intruder theory because of those cobwebs in the window.
The intruder theory didn't make sense to the grand jury. The Boulder police had photographed cobwebs. So for someone to get through a small opening like that and not disturbing a cobweb would be remarkable.
A grand jury doesn't decide guilt or innocence the way a regular jury does. The grand jury is only there to decide whether or not there's probable cause to charge the suspects with a crime.
We were troubled by, to what level of confidence do we need to have to vote to indict? And it's the preponderance of the evidence, which means greater than 50%. And soon after that, we voted to indict.
The grand jury was looking at 2 specific accusations for the Ramseys: child abuse resulting in death and accessory to a crime. The grand jury couldn't point the finger at Patsy or John specifically, but they were sure that one of them committed the crime and the other person helped to carry it out.
This is 7 News at 5.
There is high anticipation in Boulder right now for a Ramsey decision, and we are about to hear an announcement from Boulder DA Alex Hunter.
I and my prosecution task force believe we do not have sufficient evidence to warrant the filing of charges against anyone who has been investigated at this time.
I was shocked. It's extremely unusual for a grand jury to vote to charge and the DA not charge.
I think deciding not to prosecute the parents for homicide was the right decision. No matter what you believe about the case, it would have been very difficult to get a conviction.
Thank you very much.
There were too many questions, in particular, that DNA in the underwear that appears to have been from a man didn't match anyone they knew of.
That's why Lou Smith continued investigating even after he resigned from the case.
He had condensed everything he knew about every person of interest into a spreadsheet.
It's like a PowerPoint on steroids. It detailed 887 names.
But I think what turned this whole case has always been DNA. The killer left behind, I believe, part of his DNA.
On their podcast, Lou Smith's granddaughter spoke about his focus on the DNA in the case.
Over nearly 13 years, Lou took all of the information that he had on this case and developed a database. In this particular murder, he thought that DNA would solve this case.
And thanks to major advances in DNA, a number of big surprises were about to come to the case.
What became groundbreaking at the time was a thing called touch DNA. Essentially, when someone touches something, the skin cells they leave behind can be tested.
In 2008, the then district attorney for Boulder, Mary Lacey, decided to do a new round of DNA testing on JonBenet's pajama leggings.
Remember, there was already DNA from an unknown male found under JonBenet's fingernails and in her underwear. But analysis of touch DNA on her leggings uncovered something new. DNA from at least one unknown male, maybe two.
In recent months, investigators used that new procedure, which helped them discover fresh DNA on JonBenet's long johns, left by the killer's fingertips.
Now new DNA analysis proves just that. The Boulder District Attorney clears all members of the Ramsey family in the murder of their 6-year-old daughter, JonBenet.
That's a pretty big development. You've got DNA now in 3 places that doesn't match anybody in the Ramsey family. That's a pretty clear indication that somebody else was there, and nobody knows whose DNA it is.
This revelation of this new unmatched DNA drove the district attorney to announce they're no longer looking at the family.
The news broke here at the district attorney's office with this incredible letter to JonBenet's father.
DA Mary Lacey wrote John Ramsey, "We do not consider your immediate family, including you, your wife Patsy, and your son Burke, to be under any suspicion in the commission of this crime."
The DA also apologized to the Ramseys. She wrote in part, "To the extent that we may have contributed in any way to the public perception that you might have been involved in this crime, I am deeply sorry." John Ramsey responded to the DA's letter and the stunning development on a local newscast.
We're certainly grateful for an acknowledgement that we are innocent, that this was an intruder, which of course we've always maintained.
But this is a reminder how often that they are human beings and how often they get it wrong, how often their biases take them down the wrong path.
Somebody told me in the police world, they said the most dangerous thing is a police department that's made up their mind. And that's certainly what happened in our case.
All it takes is one match to the DNA, and you've possibly nailed the killer.
Our killer, JonBenet, how many victims has he had in the past? And how many victims is he going to have in the future? And so this killer could still be murdering even today.
Lou Smith dedicated years to investigating the JonBenet Ramsey murder case. But eventually, he ran out of time.
When he got sick with cancer, he knew that his time was limited. And so during that time, he just talked to others about not letting this case die.
He had people coming every single day, 60 to 70, 80 people a day, coming to see him. And they said their goodbyes. And during that time, he would still talk about the case.
I remember about the last 3 days, he had slipped into a coma, and the conversations would become one way, you know, and I don't know if you could hear me or not.
I'm John Ramsey. I had the opportunity to visit Lou a week before he died. Remarkably, during that time together, Lou talked a lot about the case. He hadn't given up. He never gave up.
Lou Smith's legacy lives on, and his tenacity to solve this case was passed on to his daughter, Cindy Mara.
And he just said, "I have a name. I want you to write it down." And I did. And he said, "That's where you start." You know, we'd be glad to pay that. We don't have that electronic report, so we would need Boulder to send it. After my dad died, you know, a couple of us, our family, and then some of his old homicide partners, we just formed a team.
You want to go down to number 2, because that is an in-state one.
Yep.
What we all share in common is that commitment to fulfill Lou's dying wish, that this case doesn't die with him. And I think it's that devotion, that respect, that love for Lou is what keeps our team moving forward.
According to investigators, there were other possible suspects, including a local Santa in town who had previous interactions with the Ramseys.
There's no way in the world that I could be involved in the death of this little girl. I adored her.
But there's another man who comes forward with a claims he's responsible for JonBenet's murder.
I love JonBenet, and she died accidentally.
The mystery surrounding the murder of JonBenet Ramsey haunted Lou Smith until the day he died. But he left behind that detailed list, hoping that one day JonBenet's killer would finally be brought to justice.
He had condensed everything he knew about every person of interest into a spreadsheet.
It was like a PowerPoint on steroids. The spreadsheet detailed 887 names.
He wanted us to take the list that he had and try and keep the case alive.
Out of those 887 entries, by the time he went into hospice, Lou had marked 134 cleared.
Over the years, there have been many leads that seem promising at one time or another.
That new Netflix documentary, Making News, details how just months after JonBenet's murder, a 12-year-old girl who lived less than 2 miles from the Ramseys was attacked as she slept in her bed.
Sometime in the late hours, Mom hears a noise going on.
And there was, in fact, an intruder in her daughter's bedroom preparing to molest her. That person has never been identified. That girl had attended the same dance studio as JonBenet. Are the two cases connected? I don't know.
Boulder police said that while the two cases had some similarities, they found no definitive connection.
In the search for the killer, investigators chased down countless leads, including a local transient.
Here you have Gary Oliva, who apparently on the night or the next day after JonBenet was killed, called a friend and told him over the phone that he had hurt a child.
All of a sudden I get a phone call, and it's Gary, and he's sobbing into the phone like I've never heard anybody sob in my entire life. I hurt a little girl.
He was a homeless man who hung out at a church just a block and a half from the Ramseys' home. And he confessed that he killed JonBenet Ramsey.
They took a look at him, but eventually eliminated him because there's absolutely no connection between he and the Ramseys. And his DNA, they used that to eliminate him.
Investigators also looked into Bill McReynolds, a local Santa Claus who'd worked at the Ramseys' holiday parties.
JonBenet had made a comment that he, Bill McReynolds, was coming to their house to see JonBenet. I think everybody thought that was a little weird. His DNA didn't match, and he's out of the picture.
And then Alex Hunter, the Boulder County District Attorney, speaks directly to the killer.
I want to say something to the person or persons that committed this crime. The list of suspects narrows. Soon, there will be no one on the list but you.
A day after the DA rattles the cage, a man named Michael Helgoth attracts the attention of authorities.
Michael Helgoth evidently committed suicide the day after the Boulder District Attorney threatened that, hey, we're going to find you.
The death of this child has broken all of our hearts. We will see that justice is served in this case and that you pay for what you did.
That speech was designed to get the killer nervous.
When Michael was found dead, there was a stun gun at his residence. Also, there was a pair of high-tech boots.
These two clues had previously been linked to JonBenet's murder.
Stun gun, a bit odd for people to have. High-tech boots, fairly common thing for people to have. But the real clincher would be DNA didn't match, and he has no connection to the Ramsey family.
And so investigators also eliminate Helgoth as a person of interest.
Investigators finally felt they had a real break in the case with John Mark Carr. He famously claimed he was with JonBenet when she died.
I love JonBenet. Die accidentally.
Are you an innocent man?
No.
Her death was an accident.
So you were in the basement?
Yes.
Problem is, he wasn't in Boulder, Colorado when she died, and his DNA didn't match.
Even though Carr claimed he was in the basement when JonBenet died, there was just no physical evidence linking him to her murder. And so Carr was eliminated as a suspect.
Take a look at it.
Decades later, the search still goes on for the little girl's killer.
What our team has been doing is focusing on collecting DNA and testing DNA.
I think it's imperative that we investigate every credible suspect that's been provided.
If we keep at it, hopefully we'll finally whittle it down to one person remaining on that list.
Do you think you know who the killer is?
You know, no, I don't. And this is a very dark, evil person. I don't know anybody like that.
But could advances in DNA technology finally help catch the person who killed JonBenet? The JonBenet Ramsey case is just as mysterious today as it was in 1996, when her devastated parents were left with tiny mementos from their daughter to hold on to.
It makes me sad that there were happy little hands in this glove. Now they're gone.
So the memories bring tears to your eyes, but you're also a little more at peace?
I don't know. I don't think I will be at peace until we find out who did this.
For Patsy Ramsey, sadly, her fight to find her daughter's killer ended in 2006 when she passed away.
Patsy died of ovarian cancer.
Yes.
Went through all of that without knowing that she'd been cleared.
That's correct.
She was buried next to JonBenet in Marietta, Georgia. But the search for justice continues.
I think it's even more mysterious now to some degree because who the heck was in that house? How'd they get in? Why'd they target her?
Lou Smith's family, dedicated to keeping the case moving forward, continues to work on whittling down a list they presented to law enforcement in 2020.
And what we presented was a confidential list of our top 20 people of interest and the list of the 8 people of interest that our team had eliminated through DNA analysis.
The technology has just advanced so tremendously. JonBenet's blood was mixed with unknown male DNA in her underpants, and we need to separate out those 2 profiles, which can be done now, and use genealogical DNA, which has been a huge tool in solving cold cases recently.
That technique has solved some old, dead cold cases. That's what we're asking the police to do.
Well, DNA science has progressed significantly since the early years of the JonBenet investigation, and investigators can now work with smaller, mixed, and degraded samples. There are still significant hurdles.
What will be your message to the Boulder Police Department today?
Look, just tell us, are you using one of these very cutting-edge labs to do additional DNA testing? If you are doing additional DNA testing, that's all I need to know.
According to the Boulder PD, investigators are utilizing outside labs and experts in the latest technology.
Our collaboration also includes the Colorado Cold Case Review Team, which is a panel of outside experts brought together in December of 2023 to review this case. Our department has had ongoing conversations with JonBenet's family, the last of which occurred in mid-2024. Our goal is to find JonBenet Ramsey's killer. Our commitment to that has never wavered.
The family has not lost the will to fight and the will to find the killer. If we can find the killer, then the next generation doesn't have to live with that trauma and the unknown and the speculation. If we leverage the evidence, we follow the facts, we will find this killer. My dad certainly suffered a tremendous amount, but I think he's focused on life today and enjoying life with his family and grandkids, and he's remarried.
But he says he's still always thinking of JonBenet, trying to focus on the positive of this beautiful little girl who will always be forever young.
She knew she was loved. I mean, we told her that every day. Somebody asked me once, what would you say to JonBenet if you could? I would tell her, I'm sorry, I didn't protect you. You know, I had JonBenet bless my life for 6 years. And she really was a blessing.
The Boulder DA tells 2020 that the office is continuing to work with federal, state, and local agencies to make progress on this tragic case.
And David, Lou Smith's family says they're determined to continue making their way through that list. We're going to stay on this story. That's our program for tonight. I'm Deborah Roberts.
And I'm David Muir from all of us here at 2020 and ABC News. Good night.